All right, welcome back to Problem Solver Politics. I am your host, Cardin Ellis, with Cody the Oracle.
Hey, everybody.
And Joe Rogan, you got to watch out, man. The YangGang's coming for Joe Rogan. I mean, before I even knew what ratioing was, I didn't even think this kind of thing was possible. And there were some seriously untouchable folks on the internet. But apparently, even Joe Rogan can bother some people. He did it once when he had to get the Twitter CEO back on. I remember that.
Jack Dorsey.
Yeah, Jack Dorsey. When his Jack Dorsey interview didn't go really well, there was a lot of conservatives actually that had said, hey, you wimped out on these questions. So he brought not only Jack Dorsey on, Jack Dorsey's executive in charge of not doxing, but eliminating people off the platform, and Tim Pool. And then
it was like their head lawyer almost, like legal.
Yeah, exactly. And then now Joe Rogan's, I don't know if you want to call it a misinterpretation, a misrepresentation, a miss whatever, has really bothered the YangGang and the internet. And his video, for like one of the first times in forever, has an infinitely more amount of dislikes than likes. And that's pretty difficult for the self-proclaimed king of the internet, right? So anyway, Cody, just tell us what's going on, my man.
Okay, cool. So basically what we've been seeing, a lot of people probably heard something along these lines. Basically, Andrew Yang was asked at a MSNBC climate town hall about the emissions that cattle produce. And I'm going to play just a short clip of what his answer was. But the question was, what should we do about the emissions caused by cattle?
Cool.
And if you project forward on what we would need to do to reduce emissions, you would want to modify Americans' diets over time. Now, some of that is happening naturally through education. I do think it's difficult to regulate diets.
Of course.
So what you would want to do, again, is you'd want those cattle producers to have to internalize the cost of emissions. Because if your cattle ends up polluting a lot, which they do just naturally, we don't hate them for it. I mean, they're just big animals.
So don't hate the gun, use the user, but don't hate the cattle.
Hate them, whatever.
Hate the emission.
So then what that would naturally do, and some people are going to hate this, but it would probably make those products more expensive. And that is appropriate because there's a cost to producing food in that way. And so if you were to make it more expensive, then you would end up changing consumption patterns.
Okay, cool. So that's everything he said. You'll notice the answer itself was actually pretty mild and boring. He just kind of said, well, if cows cost emissions, we should have an emissions tax, I guess. And then if it makes beef cost more money, maybe less people will eat beef. Really quickly, I don't know for sure, but I do know most of the kind of times I see Andrew Yang actually eating in public, it's not eating beef.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's interesting, but remember the story. Andrew Yang ordered a chicken cheesesteak from Jersey Mike's while he's in Philly, which is rough. And then we also see over here on Twitter, when he went to the Iowa State Fair, he ate turkey leg.
Yeah.
Now, anyway.
Dude, doesn't it look like that reporter just jumped up right in the middle of a big bite of turkey leg and he's like, hey, I'm trying to finish here, lady.
Well, I think they're interviewing him while he was eating it. Anyway, though, I don't want to get too lost on that because here is then what Joe Rogan said in his podcast, I believe just a couple of days ago.
Out of the weed.
Yeah.
You know, and even that Andrew Yang guy, like talking about getting people to stop eating meat. Like that, hey, no.
Yeah, come on.
Stop. You can't.
That's what I liked about him. He was analytical. He was just, let's fix this problem that's broken.
He probably believes that that's key to making the world a better place.
All right.
I think there's a lot of people that would argue against that. I think if he sat down with those people and had a debate, I don't think he'd do well. You know,
Yeah.
I think if someone who could explain the nutrition like really explain, based on like a Chris Kresser guy, based on actual science, someone like Rhonda Patrick, no, you're not going to stop people from eating beef. Just stop.
Yeah.
That's not smart. It's not wise. You're going to put all these ranchers out of business. It's an elitist thing to say. You don't understand how many
It's a
jobs
longer
are
clip. That's generally from this
Yeah.
point on, he just kind of goes on about vegetarianism for about 6 minutes, and then factory farming, he said it's bad. Yeah. Only factory farming. However, you'll notice there wasn't anything crazy he said. Now, what he did say a couple things that made people upset. One, he said Andrew Yang wants to get people to stop eating meat, and meat has certain. It's like, well, Andrew Yang eats meat, and he said nothing about meat. He was talking particularly about taxing cows. Like, I thought he was an analytical guy. Look, it's a pretty boring position. Maybe there should be a slight tax on cow emissions. I don't agree with it, but it's not. It isn't, we need to move off of meat in 10 years. It's, well, maybe if there's a slight tax, it costs a little more, and people would probably still eat it anyway. So that was interesting. Now, last thing I want to go through.
Okay.
Because the video goes on, and like I said, he just kind of goes on about vegetarianism for a few minutes and says factory farming's bad.
Okay.
But as you were talking about, this isn't unheard of necessarily, but it's not very typical. We'll look at the comment section. 814 likes to 2.1 thousand dislikes. Now, to be fair, I've seen 1,000 to 1 ratios. So this roughly 2 to 1 isn't the worst I've ever seen. But still, it's interesting. Generally speaking, he's a really popular channel. People like his stuff. And you come into the comments, and what do you read? You read people immediately, this is wrong. Yang never said he was going to stop people from eating beef.
Dude.
Joe, he said we're not the type of country to tell people what they can or can't eat. And I can just go through and find comments. That one is 828 upvotes. This one, or thumbs up. Misrepresentation. Sad to see Yang's views be contorted like that. You need to do a whole new podcast with Andrew. Joe got super triggered over something that he's not even informed on. Someone basically said, I'm a big Joe Rogan fan, but I disagree on this one. He didn't say that. Now you're just rambling. This one I thought was interesting. You had Yang on your podcast, and you talk about him like you don't even know who he is. It wasn't interesting. He was like, this Andrew Yang guy, whatever he's about. I'm like, did you talk with him for 3 hours or whatever?
I love it.
How about thumbs down on this one, Joe? Check your facts. Delete. This is not his stance at all. Rogan falling for fake news. So you notice, but my larger point I want to put out in the comments is, right or wrong, the YangGang, man. Hey, by the way, shout out to our friend Ariel. There he is. That YangGang, the Andrew Yang guy talks to. He's never met him. So shout out to him. But
where's Ariel?
Right here. Revolutionary
thinking.
Anyway,
rock on.
Larger point is, you'll notice how all these comments are very much the same thing. Hundreds of votes, all kinds of good stuff of people saying, what are you talking about? Andrew Yang never said that. And then to be fair, Andrew Yang never did say that. Andrew Yang said that he thought maybe we could tax cattle for emissions, and that might have people eat less beef because it'll cost more. He said nothing about shutting down farms. So again, I can go through the comments and show you hundreds of them. The last thing I just kind of wanted to highlight, what I thought was kind of interesting, is if I go over and just show you, again, the way he kind of dismissively talked about Andrew Yang. I mean, Andrew Yang, just look at the other podcasts he had been doing around that same period of time.
Okay.
Sorry, let me get myself a little bit out of the way. You'll notice that, just roughly what he was doing around that period of time, the views he was getting on videos. The Andrew Yang one was one of his more popular videos from that part of the year. There we go. You can see 4 million views. Everything else, roughly 1.5. I mean, it was Dr. Phil-esque. So it was a little bit interesting how that Andrew Yang guy, I don't know if you ever heard of him. I guess he exists. You had him on your show and talked to him for 2 hours, and it was one of your most popular shows of the early part of the year.
Yeah.
You'd think you'd remember the Andrew Yang guy. So I thought that was interesting. I don't want to take too much out of that in particular. A lot of reasons why he might have been just straight up big time, and I'm just that Andrew Yang guy, whoever he thinks he is. Yeah. Still, that, like I said, the takeaway here I want to say, argue right or wrong with vegetarianism, you'll notice that even someone like Joe Rogan, who's got a pretty big fan base and people really like, and a lot of these comments, you'll see people say, I like your show and don't like this clip. Yeah. The YangGang comes out, man. YangGang comes out. Doesn't matter who you are. Doesn't matter how nice you've been to him in the past. You slight the guy, they come out and let you hear it every single time.
He literally had a rant for 7 minutes on something that didn't happen. I mean, that is harsh, man.
It's true, though, right?
Oh my goodness gracious. The comment section in YouTube is the new public square. So anyway, I have a couple of thoughts on this. Are you done?
No, yeah, like I said, that's kind of what happened. And my thoughts, my larger thoughts are, YangGang comes out, man. You slight Andrew Yang at your own peril, man. Doesn't matter who you are. Andrew Yang, you gave him a start, doesn't matter. Joe Rogan gave you a start, doesn't matter. You slight him, they come for you. And this is how it comes.
I'm really worried about when I have our video on the things we disagree with Andrew Yang on. Uh-oh. Are they going to burn our studio down, man?
No, one little aside. A lot of people, probably some people who are in this comment section even, personally said they disagree with Andrew Yang's stance on that. I heard a lot of people saying, you're not going to agree with every candidate and everything. This is one of the things. That and his pornography stance, which we'll get into later. But anyway, those are two things that for people say, you know what? I don't love him for this. But for the most part, they like their policies and move on. I'm sure some people in this comment section personally disagree with that policy, but say, hold on. Andrew Yang never said he wants to get rid of farms or anything. He never said that. He said he wants to tax cows, which I disagree with, but more tepid than the representation, I guess. Yeah. I apologize.
Okay. No, it's all good. This is why you are the wise oracle, Cody. Cody the Oracle. Anyway, I have a couple of things that I just had a slight problem with that I would like to point out. First and foremost, could you go to the beginning of the MSNBC clip, where the student from Georgetown first initially asked the question before the audio goes bad? Could you just play that clip briefly for a second right here? All right.
Hi, I'm Madison Dyer. I'm a sophomore at Georgetown studying healthcare management. And my question was, realistically, the only way to curb expansion and reduce the environmental impact of the cattle industry is to reduce demand. What policy adjustments would you make to reduce this demand?
Okay, so stop. That right there, and I don't want to sound like some right-wing radio host or a conspiracy theorist or whatever.
Hold on. You don't?
No, I don't.
Oh,
but I
that's weird.
would like to point out that to me sounds a lot like academic, I don't want to call it brainwashing, but influence with a political agenda. Because the question literally was, she first framed the scenario in a false scenario. She said, okay, realistically, meaning you can't disagree with me unless you're not realistic. Okay, so realistically, the only way to curb emissions is to lower demand. I mean, you could use that kind of framework to ask any question. I could say, well, realistically, socialists are just violent people, so the only way to control them is to jail them all. What? You know what I'm saying? I could come out and I could say, well, realistically, capitalism kills, so we have to kill capitalism. And so what are your policy to adjust on capitalism? I mean, it sounds really like a question that was fed from a pseudo-scientific environmentalism 101 class. And it omits what Andrew Yang, what young people, what the internet generation, what entrepreneurs, and what scientists are so good at, innovation. This isn't the first time where we've been stuck in a scenario where some kind of necessary thing to manufacture has been causing a lot of pollution, or some kind of culturally significant aspect of our lives needs to be modified for the better of everybody, okay? And we have never gotten to where it needs to be by forcing ourselves into an A or B scenario, okay? It's possible, instead of just saying who gets a bigger slice of the pie, you know, you could come out and you could say, oh, well, realistically, these people over here are getting bigger slice of the pie than those people over here, and these people over here aren't getting enough. So what are you going to do to legislate that these people have to give up part of their pie and give it to them? No, that's dichotomous thinking. That's way too binary. No economy, no society, no religion, no person, no individual, no family has ever grown thinking in absolutely binary terms. Jesus Christ didn't teach that in the New Testament. The Buddha didn't teach that in his middle path. Nowhere is it healthy to think in such binary ways, okay? Because they force binary answers. Instead, let's let innovation handle it. That's why I actually like Andrew Yang. And to me, his answer seemed to betray a little bit his idea that innovation can move us forward. I mean, there's amazing advancements now in people making artificial meat. I know that sounds crazy, but so did artificial ice in the early 20th century. When freezers were able to create ice out of water, the natural ice companies actually boycotted them. And you can see all of these articles where they said like natural ice would be bad, natural ice would be this, would be that. But just because it was, now you and I don't think twice about going to McDonald's, pouring a bunch of ice in our cup that was made in a freezer, and then putting some Sprite in there and then drinking it. Yet that was actually a thing that we fought. And there was binary thinking back in those days. There was literally binary thinking in which people tried to outlaw artificial ice in freezers. Okay? So I think one of the biggest reasons why I like Andrew Yang is because he often does not force himself to get stuck in this capitalism versus socialism argument. This, do you give unto Caesar that which is Caesar's, or do you give unto God that which is God's argument? Okay? Do you love mommy or do you love daddy? He refuses to get into those binary arguments. And in this one, I feel he kind of slipped into it. And when you slip into it, you run the risk of sounding what? What was the criticism, Cody, of his answer?
I don't know. What was it?
Well, at least in the comment section, I saw like, we're not a country that tells people what they can and can't eat. You know what I'm saying? Even though in New York you're not allowed to get more.
But I think that's literally what Andrew Yang said, is that we're not here to regulate diet. That's not really important. Or that's not important. He said it's not really realistic. So that's what Andrew Yang said. Like, it's not what we're here to do. Perhaps the tax could change increasing the rates. Again, like I said, what's interesting to me about this whole thing is the fact that, dude, Andrew Yang, realistically, we have for months asked people, how'd you hear about Andrew Yang? Every single time I ask people, I would say we get like a 9 out of 10 response of, I heard about Andrew Yang when he was on Joe Rogan. Okay? So this is the hand that feeds, so to speak. And like I said, man, when people are so tired of the media misrepresenting Andrew Yang, I could just scroll through these comments for another few seconds and just stop. We'll just land here. What do we got? Joe stopped the lies. Andrew never said that. Come on, Joe. You should hear exactly what Yang said firsthand instead of misrepresenting him. Really baffled me on this one, Joe. You had a great talk with Andrew Yang and you act like this. After a while, maybe 2 minutes in, he starts making a lot of sense. And like I said, as the video continues, it gets really kind of, he just kind of talks about vegetarianism, but it was really interesting the way he did that, the Yang bit. And again, it was like in 90 seconds of a 7-minute clip in a multi-hour podcast, and I can scroll down hundreds of comments and find.
Yeah.
Pull another one up, random. When has I think Yang ever said that? I recall the clip when he said there's a study to say if we all went vegetarian, we'd be fine. Andrew Yang clickbaiting something he hasn't done. I'm not a Yang guy. He's in my top 3, but come on, Joe, you're better than this. And I can just keep pulling him. Like I said, the thing that stands out to me, and we see this all the time, it's just another great moment of highlighting it. The Yang Gang's real, man. And when you go online and you say stuff about Andrew Yang online that people don't like about, like that people don't think is fair. That's a better way of putting it. And people fear Andrew Yang is not being represented fairly. People let you know. And I think the problem is because it's happened so often in the media. Yeah. I mean, I remember one time we did a video on somebody, some articles like free cash handout candidate Yang does X. Yeah. And then, but the next day I go to look at the video and the headline had been changed because they let him hear it. There's the NBC graphic, the snubs. There was, oh my God, that one show they said John Yang, they had to come out and issue a formal apology within hours.
Yeah.
Because every time you do it, people don't forget and they get more and more and more upset. And it's, like I said, I think the most recent thing you can look at, Joe Rogan, typically pretty favorable channel, his own channel, and we see him get downvoted on it. Again, 2-1's not the craziest, but still. And I just think that's what really interests me. When you, again, let's say to anyone in the media, Joe Rogan even, from Joe Rogan to the New York Times to CNN to NBC, misrepresent and slight Andrew Yang at your own peril. Because let me tell you something, these people... Don't say these people. The Yang Gang, they are not going to let you get away with this anymore because it happens so frequently to Andrew Yang. I mean, one last thing. I want to see if I can pull it up. Someone recently did a graphic. I believe it was, I want to say it was New York Times who did the graphic.
Yeah, okay.
And it layered every candidate over each other, and it had different size circles for which candidate is raised the most money. At first, it might appear that Andrew Yang isn't on the graphic. You know, do you see him right away?
Oh my gosh! Don't tell me he's the one wedged between Julio and
Of course,
Castro.
he's the one. Of course, he's the one of all of them. He's the one that you can. And again, do you think that I believe this is New York Times? I want to make sure I get this. Yeah. Do you think New York Times is not going to hear about this one, man? You think New York Times is going to get away with doing this? Now, they did it, and they're not going to have to issue a retraction. But like I said, because they do this stuff,
I mean, look, I think he's that's one of the only one where you cannot see his face.
And he's covered by, I forgot that gentleman's name. He's polling at like 1%. Raising money, I guess.
Who doesn't have half the amount of money? And, that is pathetic.
Is that Meacham? I don't even know who that is. Anyway, and I could probably pull up the comment section where people are not happy about this and letting them hear it. And it happens every time the media tries to slide him, this is what happens. Now, as a result, we are seeing more fair coverage of Andrew Yang. So honestly, this might be how you defeat the fake news.
It's Grassroots versus, this is literally the people versus the elite.
Yeah.
It is
Yang
the
Gang
people's
versus the media.
news. Yeah. The people's news is the comment section. Okay. It's the only thing we got access to. And then the elitist news is the actual content. The people's news are YouTube channels where people actually go out. They put GoPros on their heads. And then they go to these rallies and they show actually what happened. Who caused the violence? Who brought the hammers? Who brought the whipsticks? Who maced who? You know, instead of just allowing Mother Jones to say it was the Proud Boys, even though, you know, Proud Boys are anything that's not Antifa. And then it's not, you know, Red State or, you know, any of these other websites saying, it was, fascism in the name of anti-fascism taking over the city. You know, it's literally the people versus the mainstream. I mean, this is a wild and fun time. So anyway, I disagreed with Andrew Yang's stance on the issue. It's minor what I disagreed with, and I also don't believe in airing grievances of disagreement until you have a better solution. I don't quite know what the better solution is other than, I mean, I was raised Mormon and we have this thing called the word of wisdom where we believe to, quote, eat meat sparingly, right? Because, you know, grain is good for the body. It's good for feeding to the animals, the horses, so on and so forth. Do you still have that up? I was showing you earlier. Oh, you still got it? Yeah. Okay. So this was my Sunday school upbringing. All right. That, There it is. And again, verily I say unto you, the wholesome herbs God hath ordained for the constitution, nature, and use of man. That's a blatant endorsement of medical marijuana. No, I'm just kidding. But basically, the herbs should be eaten with prudence and thanksgiving. And yea, flesh and of beasts and fowls of the air I've ordained for the use of man with thanksgiving, but nevertheless they are to be used sparingly. So I'm very familiar with this idea that, that there is a spiritual consequence to our diets, that, if you believe your body is a temple, you want to feed it the best food. And we really need to take seriously what we eat. But this idea that it's a dichotomous argument, that the only way out of this is to legislate against the beef industry, I just find far too small in the way they're thinking, far too minimalist in the way they're thinking, far too dichotomous, far too leftist, far too, big government. I don't like it. I generally bristle against it. So though I didn't necessarily agree with what Andrew Yang thought, and I don't think he necessarily might have thought it out all the way, to say, hey, we might have to address this at some way, and this is one way we could address it. I definitely think it seems odd that Joe Rogan would say what he said. It doesn't seem like he represented it well. And it was strange how, I get you can't remember everybody on your show, but if the guy you interviewed, Andrew Yang, brought you pretty much one of the top 2 most popular clips of that year,
or like the month,
or of that month, or
he had Alex Jones on a few months later and did 15 million views. So I don't want to say he's the biggest one he ever
yeah, he's
did,
not
but
saying
still.
yeah, that Alex Jones guy, So I don't know. Yeah, that did seem a little bit off.
Well, here's the comments right here. Yeah. I think Joe genuinely forgot Yang was on his podcast. That guy, Andrew Yang, you mean that guy that was literally on your podcast? Wow, Joe, you had Yang on your podcast and you talk about him like if you don't even know who he is, shaking my head.
Oh, man.
Not happy.
That is hilarious. So anyway, guys, let us know what you guys think about this. Let us know what you think the misstep was. I would actually love to hear some answers and proposals. And who knows, maybe we can even do a video about this because I've seen horrible documentaries of cities in South Carolina and West Virginia where there's these massive pig farms, and the only way to actually get rid of all of the urine and the poo from the pigs is actually to spray it with these sprinkler systems over these large fields. And the people that live next to them, not only is there a horrible smell, but they have like triple and quadruple the amount of cancer. So I'm very aware that besides having a spiritual rebirth about our consumerism in order to tamper down manufacturing to help get rid of plastics, I really do think that America also needs kind of like almost a spiritual rebirth in our social fabric, and also in the fabric of our diets and what is culturally acceptable and not acceptable, or at least culturally educated. We got rid of littering through education. We didn't get rid of littering through legislation. We got rid of the litter bugs by educating people about the negative effects of littering and poor waste management. And I think if there was education about our diets and what the better choices are, we would do better. But I'm not quite exactly sure what the better choices are other than eating meat sparingly, and even what does that mean? So please comment below, send us links. If you haven't followed us on Twitter yet, please follow us on Twitter. We love communicating with our fans that way. If you haven't liked this video, please like it. If you haven't shared it yet, please share it. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. If you want to contribute to the channel, please check out the PayPal link below. You can pick up a hat at problemsolverpolitics.com, and please join us on Twitch. Every Tuesday and Thursday, we stream live. We can answer all of your questions. And if you got an Amazon Prime membership, then you actually have a free sub, and you can sub to our channel on Twitch and be able to contribute that way. Anyway, let us know what you guys think. Reach out. This is Problem Solver Politics. We will see you guys in the next video.